Welcome back, everybody. Let's take a look at modernism. So we're moving into the 20th century. If you will reflect upon the previous movement, which was realism, this slide here kind of transitions us into modernism. So if you'll reflect upon the growth of cities and urbanism, as well as the influential thinkers of Karl Marx and Charles Darwin and their contributions to realism. And that leads us to the influential thinkers for modernism. And they are Sigmund Freud, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Albert Einstein. Freud gives us the importance of the subconscious mind, whether that can be expressed in dreams or in the hidden driving force that as we go through our day-to-day lives, we do things that are driven by our subconsciousness. And Freud gave us id, ego, and the superego. Those are some terms that he came up with. And the result of Sigmund Freud's work, society developed a lot more relaxed sexual morality. Society became much more open as we move into modernism, and people interacted with each other day to day much more informally. Then, with Friedrich Nietzsche, he gives us the idea of the superhuman. And the superhuman is someone who refuses to be bound by society's existing forms, such as Christianity, being loyal to state, to government, having faith in science, and middle-class comfort. And Nietzsche, in his superhuman, really views the world as lacking transcendental laws and believe that the bulk of the populace is unimaginative and mediocre. And this superhuman, the Übermensch, believe that God is dead. Then Albert Einstein, with his scientific discoveries at the subatomic level, as well at the vast view of space, with his theory of relativity, proved that time and space are dependent upon or relative to an observer. So what happens with the work of these influential thinkers, whether it's psychology or philosophy or science, everything starts to shift, everything starts to be displaced. Then we add World War I. Please note, World War I marks the starting point of modernism. So if there's an exam question that has different historical events and asks you to pick which one marks the start of modernism, it is World War I. And that's why if you look at the very first slide, the beginning year of modernism is 1914. That's when World War I began. World War I is, by some accounts, the most important war. And the reason for this is that it really marks a sharp break between the previous century and its ideals. And a good way to think about this, if we look at this top slide here, turn my pen on. If we look at this top slide here, right, we'll see a horse over here, right? 1914, people, having horses was quite common, but then what do we see here? We see an early tank. Yeah, it's a good way to think about what was going on during this time is that there's huge technological advancements, not only in machinery, but in things like we got, over here we have a howitzer. Down here, right, we have a machine gun and gas. This is the war in which the soldiers, the generals were shooting poison gas at each other. It was just terrible, terrible, terrible. As well, it was the first war in which non combatants, in other words, people who were not involved in war, were targeted and killed. And other wars, the only people who would be targeted with cannon fire or, you would aim at would be soldiers. If you were a civilian, you were not targeted in other wars. But in World War I, civilians were targeted. So what happened in World War I, more than 10 million casualties worldwide, and it's seen as a great civilization destroying itself. And there was incredible social change going on during World War I because there were so many men who were drafted and fighting in the war. Women had to go work in the factories. So women joined the workforce in huge numbers. After the war, the European powers lost their overseas colonies. The individual was largely seen as powerless. And the result of this is shortly after the start of a new century, it was a really dark cloud, really pessimistic view to the start of this new century. And we'll continue talking about modernism in the next lecture.